What's happening, everybody? It's your man, Dame DNYDC. You know what time it is. It's Monday night. Brand new episode. Brand new guest joining me tonight on the mic. And, it's September, and this time of year is a very important time for many who are really dealing with the situation that, I'll be honest with you, as a man, had no idea the severity of, really more so didn't even really know it existed. And I have the pleasure tonight of hopefully educating other men like myself, because we really need to be supportive, of the situation, and really be supportive of the guest that's joining me. She's an amazing individual, an amazing human being that have had the pleasure of getting to know over the last several months. Her family, they're all amazing. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to bring to the other mic tonight the amazing and the awesome Megan Stewart. Megan, how are you doing today, sis? It's always good. I love to smile. I mean, I always love to smile. How are you feeling? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm blessed to be here with you, and I'm really looking forward, to this conversation, because, like I stated, it's September, and with September comes, just an awareness really of PCOS, right? Mm-hmm. And you've been really campaigning and at the forefront, as the founder and director of your organization. For those of you who may think, oh, I've seen her somewhere. Megan has been a lot of places. Elle Magazine. She's been seen on USA 9 here locally. And Megan, I have to ask before we even get started. One, just give us a brief overview, if you will, of what PCOS, because I really need our men to really understand. And I'm hoping that, as a man, like I said, this means a lot to me to be able to share this on my platform, but we need to be educated, and it really just kind of give us a brief overview before we really dive into it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So PCOS stands for Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. It's the number one cause of infertility in women. It has a whole slew of different symptoms. It's really an endocrine hormonal disorder. 1 in 5 women have it, and you're talking about from head to toe. So from head to toe, in meaning hair loss on the head, hair growth on the face, weight gain, missed menstrual cycles. You're just talking all sorts of stuff, and the symptoms grow like annually. It feels like every year they come up with a new symptom. The most recent one that really hit home to me was tooth decay. So PCOS kind of tricks your body into thinking that you're diabetic.
Wow.
And so when you're thinking about diabetes, right? Like diabetics, they can lose their fingers, they can lose their teeth due to tooth decay, and just all over the place, right? So a lot of women don't know that they have it. They aren't formally diagnosed until they go to have children, and they're realizing that they can't have children, or that they're struggling to have children. So yeah, it's deep.
Yeah, and it really is. Like I said, the more I've learned about it, because like I said, I am diabetic, and this reading so many things, and I lost my mom to diabetes. And it's one of those things where, like, how do you, and we're going to get into this, but some of the symptoms, how can we identify, and what are some of the things that can trigger? We're going to get into that. But before I go further, because I just felt it important to really get that out there. I want everyone to understand what we're talking about this evening. But before I get to that, there's a person, you are the person, unfortunately or fortunately, because sometimes, sometimes these things help us really elevate, and take us to another level. But I want to know, who is Megan the person? Now, I've gotten to see a side of Megan that, we all love and enjoy. Yeah, right. Okay, we won't talk about that. But, who is Megan, Marie Stewart, the person, when a lot of time when you're not campaigning or, being the head or the founder of your organization, who's that person?
Oh, boy. It's an interesting question because I struggle with it too, because I ask myself, like, "Who are you?" Like, who are you and what is it that and I even ask, like, "Why are you here?" Right? Like,
Mhm,
"What are
mhm.
you here for?" So, of course, outside of the organization, I think I do this often is that I state, well, number 1, I'm a daughter. Um, I'm a daughter, most definitely. So, my 2 parents that you have met, Charles and Doreen, they're absolutely amazing. I could not do or be anything without them. Um, I oh man. Father, friend, um, sister, right? Like just all over the place. I also work for Capital One full time. That's my corporate job. I work for Capital One as an executive assistant. I also have my nonprofit organization, and then I have 2 businesses, but then probably adding 2 more. Well, I know for sure adding 1 more soon, and another one possibly following suit. But here at home, most definitely, my mother has dementia.
Wow.
So I help with her. But
Mhm,
then also my dad just had brain surgery in January. So very close knit family.
mhm.
We
Yep.
we stay close to each other as much
Mm,
as we possibly can.
yes. And she does. Yeah, you have an amazing family. Like I said, I've had the pleasure to meet mom and dad are great, and I can see why. I see their work in you, and you wear a lot of hats, and you gave us the education, if you will, of what PCOS is. But to go a little bit deeper, Megan, why did you start the nonprofit? PCOS.
Yeah, by accident.
Really,
Completely
really.
by accident. Well, yes, it had a path, most definitely, it had
Okay,
a path.
okay.
And it's funny because my mom's best friend often says that I was very selfless in starting it. No, I was completely selfish in starting it. So, around the age of 9, I actually started showing symptoms of PCOS, and
Oh, wow.
the symptoms that were prevalent were weight gain,
Mhm.
my mood swings were horrendous,
Wow.
started growing hair on my face and
Mhm.
losing it on my head.
Wow.
My mother, my largest advocate, right? My
Mhm.
mother started taking me from excuse me, from medical professional to medical professional, from the age of 9 to 16. I don't know, I just remember, like, going from doctor to doctor and being like, "I don't know what's wrong," right?
Wow.
Like, and
Wow.
my mom was like, "Something's wrong with this kid." "Something's wrong with this kid. Get her drugs or something." No.
Right, get her some help,
Get
really.
her so, I remember a doctor telling her that it was just adolescence and
Mhm,
that it was puberty, and
mhm,
I just had to go through it. I also remember a doctor telling her that I just needed to lose the weight.
mm,
For those that do have PCOS, that is, like, the number 1 worst thing that you can tell somebody with PCOS
mm,
is just lose the weight because it's the hardest thing to get rid of.
right.
And I do remember at that time, like, I don't know if you know back in the day, you remember, Weight Watchers was
Yeah.
literally like an in-person thing that you went
Yep,
to in a
yep,
building, and
yep.
they weighed you.
Mhm.
They weighed
Yep,
you, and you sat in a group, and you, like, said,
yep,
"Yay,
yep.
congratulations for losing weight." Well, I remember my mom, I had to have been about 10 at this point, and I remember my mom, signing us up for Weight Watchers, and we went to, she made all my meals. She scheduled all my exercise. I was a very active child. I was an equestrian. I did basketball. I did
Oh,
volleyball. Like, I just did a lot of things, and I was still just gaining weight
mhm,
with no explanation. And so I just remember being in the Weight Watchers meeting, and they came to weighing time. My mom, over the course of the week, eating the same exact things,
mhm.
probably not doing as much exercise as I was, she lost something like two
Yeah,
pounds, right?
yeah,
Then
right.
it was time to weigh Megan. She lost 0.2 pounds. It was just so
Devastating,
yeah, devastating, like, what
devastating.
is wrong with me?
Mm,
So, after that, I remember my mom taking me to another doctor, and at the time, I had been, like, complaining about pain, pelvic
mhm.
pain, I just wasn't feeling well, and so I was missing a lot of school,
Wow.
and so she taken me to another medical professional, and they told her that it was in my head and that I was faking it.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I
Goodness.
recently, just within the last 3 years, I learned that my mother did something when when she heard that from this medical professional, that when she said it out loud, I was like, you did what?"
Wha-
She gave me she she
I'm
gave me
waiting.
right, she gave me placebo pills and told me that they were the cure of all
What?
what was going on with me. My mom
Wow.
literally said that in the first week, it was like night and day. I was cured, and at that point, she believed that it was in my head. But then within, like, a week and a half, she said my symptoms came back 10 times worse,
Wow.
and it was at that point she was like, "No, there is something wrong, like, there's
Yeah.
something wrong." So finally, after, I don't know how many more medical professionals, so at the age of 16, we found, a OBGYN that
Hmm.
was well versed in PCOS. Mind you, we had no idea what PC
What it
we
was.
we had
Right.
no idea that it that's what it was, right?
Right.
So she gives the diagnosis of PCOS, but then at the same time, she says, "I got something else to tell you." It's like, "Okay, what?" "You also have cervical cancer."
Oh my
So
God.
I struggled with cervical cancer. Actually, that was the first diagnosis. I actually had cervical cancer 3 other times on top of that,
Okay.
from 16 till recently, right?
Right.
So, when you're diagnosed with something like PCOS, you of course want to ask questions and you want to be informed on the things that you should do or that
Yeah.
you can help, right?
Yeah.
But at that point, at 16, diagnosed with PCOS and cervical cancer, my doctor literally said to me, "Well, for the PCOS, come back to me when you want to have children." And of course, at 16, I was like, "Ew,
Yeah.
boys,
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
I'm good.
Right.
I'm good." So I didn't think anything of it, right? It wasn't a thought at that point. It was more like, let's get healthy in other ways as well.
Right.
So it just was a journey for me. And then at the age of, again, dating myself here, uh, just recently, in the last couple of years, they made it so that insurance, you can ride on your parents' insurance until like what, 25,
26 or
24.
25 or 26 or something like
Something
that.
like
Yeah.
that, right.
Yeah.
Well, when I was younger, the cutoff was 21, right?
21. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I got cut off of my parents' insurance. I had no
Wow.
insurance. I was working a contracting job. I didn't have insurance through them. At the time, I was sitting, at work at Boeing. It's where I worked, and I just felt crazy one day. I just felt like
Wow.
severe pain, and everybody that walked by my desk, they were like, "What's wrong? The color's kind of drained out of you.
Hmm.
You're like sweating." And all of a sudden I just keeled over and was just like, I was in
Wow.
so
My
much pain.
goodness.
So I was taken to the ER, where they told me, "Oh, remember that thing that somebody told you about PCOS?" And it was like, "Yeah,
Oh my
okay,
goodness.
yeah, I remember that thing a couple years ago." They were like, "Your cysts on your ovaries have ruptured, and there's nothing that we can do about it. Like, you
My
just have to go through this pain, period."
Jesus. Criminal.
So, they released me. They pumped me full of fluids and they gave some pain medicine, but it didn't help.
Mm.
And they were like, "Send you on your way. Please
Right.
leave." And so I just remember my mom showing up at the ER and being like, "What's going on?" Right? And she walked with me to my car, leaving the ER, and she was just like, "I see something behind your eyes. What are you thinking? You're thinking something. You're mad.
Right.
You're mad, one, and two, what's happening?" And I was just like, I can't be the only one. I just can't.
Right.
There
Right.
has to be other people that are going through this. It's just weird that nobody around me has said anything about, all my girlfriends, all my friends, all my family members, nobody's talked about whatever this is. So I started making handmade bracelets,
Hmm.
that were teal, because I did some research on PCOS and I did find one website, and it was really, and also not only, again, dating myself, this was the time before like social media, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this was when Craigslist was like the place to be, right?
Wow.
I went onto
Wow.
Craigslist and I went onto the little chat thing in Craigslist and I
Oh
typed
my
in
goodness.
PCOS, and there happened to be like two girls I lived in Seattle. I'm from Seattle. So
Okay.
um there had to be like 2 women on the Craigslist chat thing that were like, "Oh, what's this PCOS thing? It hurts. It's horrible. It's ruining my life." And I was like, "Me too."
Wow. Wow.
So I started making these bracelets because I'm very close to my family, and my family kept coming to me and they were like, "We heard you were in the hospital. What's going on? Tell us what's happening." And I would tell them, "Hi, it's PCOS and this is what's going on."
Right.
And to me, in my mind, it was like, okay, well, let's raise some awareness.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so I started making these bracelets and giving them to my friends and family and being like, "Hi, wear this. And if you see somebody or somebody comes to you and asks you, 'Hey, what's this teal bracelet that you're wearing?' Then you're able to tell them, 'Oh, it's
About
PCOS,
PCOS. Yeah.
Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, and this is what it is and whatever.'" So after a couple of years of doing that with friends and family, this was around the time that Wonder Woman had come out, and this was like the beginning of Instagram, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I had a cousin who had she was like, "No, I don't give me the bracelets. I want to buy them from you." So she bought like
Mm.
a ton. Her
Okay.
arms were just like full of them. And she went onto her Instagram and did a pose that was like the Wonder Woman
Oh,
pose,
wow.
right?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Right. And next she hashtagged me. This was the beginning of hashtags, right? She hashtagged or tagged me and hashtagged like PCOS and
Hmm.
all sorts of other things. And next thing you knew, my inbox was flooded with women all over the
Wow.
world that were like, "Hey,
Wow.
I want a bracelet." I had a woman in New Zealand. I had some women in India. I had some women in there was some in South America that were just like, "Hey, I have
Incredible.
PCOS too, and nobody's talking about this.
That
Can I
is
get a bracelet?"
incredible.
And it was at that point, it was like, "Oh, okay, this is something. Like, I gotta do something."
I mean, I mean, I had to say, I'm sitting here in awe and amazement because that story, I mean, it's so real, right?
Right.
And I mean, and this is something that you're living. And again, now to hear like this has been, I mean, obviously, it's a global thing,
Yes.
and it's not specific though. Is it? And I just have that, I don't want to be ignorant or sounding, but it's not specific to one race or group. This
No.
is just women at large.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah, I was talking to our grant writer the other day, and she was just like, "Okay, you can't think of this as PCOS. It's PCOS, but
mhm,
think of it as a women's health issue."
yes,
And
yes,
yeah, most definitely. It
yes.
definitely is.
And I asked that too because the other part is, so being a dad and being a husband, a father, I could not imagine. I know, my daughter has gone through some health issues herself, my wife as well. But I sit here and I cringe because having a daughter, and I really hope our male viewers and listeners and things, you know, what was it like? I don't know. You can't speak for your dad, but what was the takeaway? Because I know you're daddy's girl. I've had the pleasure, but what was your takeaway, from your dad's perspective, and maybe some of the conversations you guys have had that men listening, like to be there, for their daughters or their wives or their spouses or whoever it may be in their family that is dealing with PCOS.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have had the conversation, most
Hmm.
definitely. So just in the last few years, my dad came to me finally, and was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about, how does this affecting men?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we talk about it all the time,
Mm.
like in the organization, like this is something we've been pushing for." And he's like, "Well, I want to help." And I'm like, "Oh,
Okay.
okay." So that's when we started the Man of Teal section of our organization. And
Wow.
it's really dedicated to those such as yourself or my father, dads, brothers, husbands, any male um, person in your life, right? Because we all need support in
Yeah.
any aspect. And this is something that is just it hurts, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
hurts, and
Definitely. I can
and
only
and my
imagine.
dad did admit that when I was growing up, he did not know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to approach me, and he just was like, "Okay, let your mom deal with it because it's a
Yeah.
woman's thing."
Yeah.
I have no
Yeah.
idea, but he has most definitely become like, if you ask him, he'll tell you all about PCOS.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm like, "Oh, where'd you hear that from?" And he's like, "You." And I'm like, go. You're
I love it.
learning.
I love it.
And that's all we really ask for, right? Like, we
Mhm.
don't ask you. My dad has stated in the Man of Teal, we've had a couple of like sessions during conferences that we've
Mhm.
hosted called the Man of Teal session, where he sits down. It's only men. Like, the women are
Awesome.
not in that, so that they can speak freely. And he has come out of those sessions saying, like, he's amazed that a lot of men, they want to help, but they don't know how to help. And
Really.
they said in like the sessions that one of the things that they want to do is they want to start coming to like appointments with us, or
Yeah.
sitting down to have conversations about it. And maybe if they see that something is bothering us, a symptom is bothering us, making sure that they kind of pick up some slack that's happening,
Yeah.
or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's all we ask for, right? Because we go through suffering. PCOS can cause depression and anxiety, high levels of depression and anxiety. And I personally feel like that is because twofold. It's a symptom of PCOS, but it's also caused by the fact that we feel so alone and that we
Mm.
don't have that support. I think that men are very visual. So if they can't see what's going on with us, it's like, oh, that's okay. But if you have a broken arm or a broken leg, you can see
Yeah.
it. And therefore you're like, oh, okay, let me go help. Well, this is the
Mhm.
same. We're just kind of, I'm not going to say broken on the inside, but we've got things going
Yeah.
on in the inside that nobody can see.
Well, I was interested. I think you touched on it. When it comes to childbirth, men, we have no physical contact. With the child, the fetus. The development over 9 months, and that mothering, that nurturing kicks in from the start. And like you said, men. And I can only speak for myself, but I'm speaking on the behalf of. Even when my daughter got here, it still took me a minute
You're
to
like, "Wait,
adjust.
that's mine?"
Right, right. Because really, now it's like, wait a minute. So now I am really responsible. Like she's here, then I'm
Mhm.
looking at my wife. So the responsibility and things, and look, just call it what it is. Man, we're slow. We are just slow. I don't care how you cut it, and it just takes a minute. And it just really also depends on where you are mentally,
Right,
and that what's going on in a man's life really affects what he can do in his home and his situation. So
right.
but I'm glad that you said it, because I've had to learn over time, being with my wife, my daughter. It's uncomfortable sometimes to ask those questions, but my
It
daughter
is.
and I, we talk, but there's some things I know she'll go but so far, because I'm still dad. And it's like, well, is my dad gonna freak out? Is he gonna, is he gonna, what I mean? And she told me
Right.
that. So, but it's good to have, mom. And a lot of times, like, look, you talk to your mother first, and let me get back to you, because I need some education.
Mhm.
We are very visual, and it takes a minute for us to process. Like I said, we're slow. I didn't make it this way. This is how
You didn't make it this way.
I didn't
It's
make
not
it
your
this way.
fault.
Yeah, it's not my fault. But I have to ask too.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I can't even imagine. I'll be honest with you, or fathom. Just some of the things that you've had to struggle through in your life, and it. I want to give kudos to you to be able to, you still, when you show up and you show out, you come with that smile, you come with that energy. It's
Thank you.
infectious, and it really is, and I mean that. But how have you been able, Megan, to really find that strength, if you will, that confidence that, and I know some days, and if I can be honest and I just ask, some days, sometimes it's like putting on a mask sometimes,
Mm,
because we don't see maybe what you're physically going through. But I
right.
think it's important if someone, especially a young woman who may be sitting here listening to this or watching this, there had to be some type of inner strength or something that you had to find, in your confidence. How have you been able to do that, as you've grown and developed?
Yeah. So I think in the beginning it was exciting, right? This
Mm,
was something, the nonprofit was exciting to me, and it that fed things.
all right.
um and I think as time has gone, at least with the nonprofit, there's been, oh, trust me, my board, there's been plenty of times where we do an event and I will literally say during the event, nope, never doing this again. We're not
Right.
doing this. Nope, I'm not doing this next year. And something will happen during the time from my time I say that to the end of the event that re solidifies the fact that this is needed. I have to keep
Mm.
going, right? There was a couple of years ago, we did Essence asked us to host a booth at Essence Festival. And this, I will never forget this. So teal is the official color. And if anybody who knows me, I like sparkles. Sparkles are my thing, right? So anytime I do a booth at any sort of event, there's teal sparkles just everywhere, right? It's in Megan fashion, right? So, and I think that that color has definitely been known now for at least women with PCOS, that that is the official color of PCOS. And so at the Essence Festival booth, I'm standing there, you got a bunch of guys walking around, they walk right past the booth, they're like, nope, nope, women's issue, I'm good. And I'm like, wait, do you have sisters, do you have
Yep.
aunts, do you like,
Yep.
wait a second.
Yep.
But then I look up and I see in the distance there's this gal, and she just kind of walked in the door, and she looks up and we catch eyes at the same time. And she's like, oh, and I'm like, oh, she has PCOS. She's about to beeline it to me.
Mm-hmm.
She does that. You can see her maneuver through the crowd and makes it to the table. And she's like, oh my gosh, is this PCOS Awareness Association? And I said, yes. And she said, you don't know how much you have helped me. And
Wow.
at that point, it was like, oh, okay, let's talk. So she furthers to tell me that, she's used all the resources on our website. She's gotten help. And then she stops and she says, wait a minute, I'll be right back. And I'm like, what's she doing? Within 2 minutes, she comes back and it's her whole family. It's her mom, her
Wow.
sister, her aunt. Everybody is at the table and they're like, we have to thank you. Like, we have to thank you for the work that you've
Wow.
done. And then they said, let's hold hands and can we pray? Oh,
Wow.
okay.
Wow.
Let's do this. So I had just got done telling my coworker, like, we're not doing this event ever again. We're just not doing it. It cost me, I don't know how much money to ship all my stuff
Mm.
down here. I didn't get to see Essence Festival at
Ain't
all.
nothing.
Like, I'm not doing this ever again. And then this happens, and it's like, okay, so I'm ready for next year.
I know that's right. I know that's right.
I'm like,
That's awesome.
when's next year? Like, we're doing this again. And she's
We're
looking at
back.
me
We're
like,
coming back.
right. She's looking at me like, no, we're not.
Well, I
So
love it.
right. I think that gives me a lot of energy, just knowing that I I don't have children. This is like my passion. This is what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And this is that, again, it just solidifies the fact that it's needed, and that that's my reason for being here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that says it all in a nutshell. And um, I'm just blown away, and I get goosebumps. I'm tingling just listening, to the story and the passion. And I really enjoy, having the opportunity to bring this, to our viewers and our community. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This is really the first part, of this conversation. I am so blown away, with Megan and her story. We're gonna make this a 2-part series. You can check the second part out next week. So make sure you stay tuned to me, your man Dame DNYDC. Megan Stewart, she's gonna be back. Part 2. Don't go anywhere. Catch us next week. Part 2. And like I always do at this time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay blessed. Mike's out.